Welcome to Life in Times of Cato. I am your host, Jay Cato, and in today's segment, I do want to discuss someone I came across the other day. It was an elderly old man, and I want to say he was probably like maybe in his 80s, pushing 90s, and he couldn't see very well. I forgot what the condition he had, but here's what's interesting about this guy, and I'm going to explain to you why I found so many things about this guy to be so interesting. Uh, for starters, he couldn't see very well, and he still had this very, very, optimistic outlook on life, and which I thought was great. And he basically said he couldn't see me directly. If he's looking right at me, he can't see me. However, if he looks, from the side of his eyes, he's able to tell that I'm wearing glasses. Um, and as I'm getting to speak to this gentleman, and the more I'm getting to know him, he tells me, hey, you want to see something cool? And I'm like, oh, sure, no problem, not a problem. And he pulls out a little jar. It's probably about that big, right? It's a little jar, and inside this jar was some black stuff, right? And he goes, you know what that is? And I'm like, no, what is that? And he was like, that's black sand from Iwo Jima. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. He was like, I was gifted this, by, being in the military and things like that. And I was just, he served in World War II, and he was at Iwo Jima. And he was like, I was gifted this. And he was like, I carry this everywhere with me as a remembrance and things that, I remember in a time of a world that was just very different. Now, when just thinking about that, and pardon me, guys, I'm coming over. I'm coming over a bit of I had COVID. So my voice might be a bit low, might be a bit straining, but in any event, in speaking to the guy, he he was like, it's just a reminder of things that he went through in life. And I just found it fascinating because I'm looking at this man, and he had such an optimistic outlook. He's such a happy guy, all with knowing that he's losing his sight, and it just kind of gives you an idea as to how resilient people can be, you know, how people can be so resilient and so strong and just unmoved by certain things. And to kind of drive this home a little bit, being out on COVID, and my wife also contracted of it, because that's just the nature of things. One person gets it, and it's a fucking domino effect. But anyway, we started to watch this show, and it's not correlated. She just so happened to be watching this show, and it was called Band of Brothers. It's an older show. It was from HBO. But as I was watching this show, I thought about that old man and watching the horrors of this show. And of course, I'm not going to get into the politics of wars and why they happen, who's wrong, who's right, whatever it is. That's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is just simply about watching these men in a position that, yes, they signed up for, but they signed up to have the world, or have the United States, keep their sensibility of freedom. Okay. And again, I'm not getting into politics. I'm talking about these people. These are people. These are men. Okay. These are people that laid their lives on the line. Please, let's not misunderstand that. Let's thank every one of them for serving. Whether you agree or not, they lay their lives on the line. In any event, watching this show and watching what goes on, there's so many atrocities, and you can see how awful we can be to one another. You can see how driven and how evil we can be to one another. And it's such a disturbing sight to see that you can harm another person in this way. And I'm talking about with machinery, with guns and tanks and bombs and blades, to take someone else's life, willingly or unwillingly, changes a man. I'm sure. I've never, but I can only imagine what that does to someone. And witnessing all these atrocities And here's what else I saw about that. And here's probably why I saw what I saw in this man. Watching that, watching those atrocities, watching those things happening to people, and these are real events. Watching people die the way they die, arms lost, legs, and just the bleeding, outwardly in a way that just can't be stopped. Every so often, they came across a town of people who wanted to be free, who knew it was wrong, who knew the way people were hurting each other was wrong. And they looked to care for the people in need. They looked to bring the people in their homes, knowing that their lives were in jeopardy. Now, that's the beauty of the world. That's the beauty of people. You can have all these atrocities go on. You can have all these evil things go on. But the one thing that seems to always count the most is when you're down in the dumps, when things are at their ugliest, there's always someone, there's always people willing to lift you up, willing to take you to that place to let you know that shit, it might look grim, but you got people willing to help you. You got people willing to back you up. You got people willing to be your strength when you ain't got it. And I think we all need to look at those things. And when I look at this man, and when I looked at this man, I saw the optimism in his eyes. I saw the optimism in his face, and just the happiness and the joy. And as much awful, crazy shit that he's probably seen, he's probably saw the best of people in times that were the ugliest, the bloodiest, the scariest, the darkest. He saw it all, but he also saw the best in people. And let me tell you, that guy is probably one of the best people because he chose to lay his life on the line for people he didn't know. And that's what he did. And that's what we're all capable of doing. We're all capable of doing so many bad things, but we're also capable of doing so many wonderful things. And this is what I use this platform for, is to kind of shine the light on things that we do well, things that regular people do well. He's a regular guy who went to a place to fight a war, didn't know the guy, didn't know the people, never pulled a trigger, never took a life. But he chose to protect what he thought was important to him, to lift up the people that he felt needed lifting up. Doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter if you agree with him or not, or the politics or not, but that's what he believed and that's what he thought he was doing. And that's what I use this platform for, is to speak on things that I've learned, speak on people that I've met, learn new things from people, learn new things from perspectives that I just learned that, maybe I didn't think about things in the right way. But I just thought that was one of the most wonderful things that I saw in that man. And after seeing that show, it correlated with that man. And I realized how much good the world can offer when it looks at its worst. And we all got to we all have to give a special thanks, and we all have to just strive that little bit to do a little bit better every day. Anyway, do what you do it well, do it the best way you know how. Jay Cotto, and I am out.